All right, it's August 19th. This is SIG Instrumentation. And as Han has just mentioned, we only have kind of one item on the agenda, which is mostly a discussion around the revisited metric stability classes. Do you want to kick it off?
Sure. So to update, me and Elena went to SIG architecture, and we brought this up. Basically, people were on board. I think there's probably going to be a little bit of bike shedding around the actual stability classes and the guarantees, but I think that's to be expected. So we should probably actually get to what the stability classes are actually going to mean, like semantically. I think that's what it comes down to now.
Well, were there any comments on the existing like light proposal, right? Like we had previously discussed like internal/debug, alpha, beta, stable, I think, right?
Yeah. So they liked the two additional stability classes, the internal or development one, and the beta. I brought up the lagging thing. So basically, we also went to working group reliability, and David Eade suggested that we lag metric classes a release behind feature releases. And the reason for this was they don't actually start mandating metrics until beta release. Mm-hmm. And even after a product goes GA, there's not enough information about usage. You don't get widespread usage until something is actually GA. And so it doesn't make sense to GA a metric without knowing how the stuff is actually being used. So it would basically be alpha during beta and beta during GA, and then like subsequent release, it would become stable.
To what capacity do we actually, I mean, if we go with the same naming as features, then people are going to have similar expectations with those names, right? But it sounds like we're expecting that there are situations where we GA a feature with a beta metric, and we're going to have to remove or change that metric significantly, right? What would that scenario then look like?
After something is GA?
After a feature has GA'd, and the metric is beta, and at this point, because now a lot of people are starting to use it, we realize there's a problem with it. What does the
I think we're gonna. I think beta things are going to be a little bit wonky. Like I think we're going to have to be okay with breaking people with beta changes.
Right? Yes, that is what was on my mind as well. But that is not the expectation that people necessarily have about beta features today in Kubernetes, and that's why I'm saying I feel like there is a potential to confuse end users.
They can expect the metric name to remain the same.
They can expect the metric name to remain the same. Okay. If that's the guarantee that we're giving, I think that would be okay. I think I need to think about it a bit more, but I think this could be workable. At least as long as we have some pretty concrete rules for this, I think anything's really okay, as long as the expectation is not just, yeah, it's exactly like features.
The metric itself, so the metric with that name, will not disappear for end releases.
Even in beta, right?
In beta. However, in beta, labels can be added or removed.
Added or removed. Okay.
What would be the process in that case, then? Like, would there be like some kind of deprecation of the beta metric before like removing the actual label, or like there is no guarantee to the label, so we can do whatever with them?
I think basically we would have to deprecate and remove just like beta features. Alpha metrics, on the other hand, can be removed without deprecation. So that would be the distinction. Because that's how it works today, right? Like alpha features can be removed without deprecation.
Yeah. So I think I'm okay with trying it exactly like this, for the one and only reason that people tend to already pretty heavily use beta features. And so I feel like when we get to that point, actually the metrics are going to be exercised enough that there aren't, you know, wild leaks.
It really depends on the feature. Like parity and fairness, the metrics have been mutating like basically release to release, right? Like these multi-release features like parity and the huge ones. Yeah. I mean, you can't really rely on them.
I mean, they are, the feature is beta, right? And so the metric is alpha.
Would be alpha,
and so
yeah.
That seems fine. That's why I'm saying, right? Like I feel like the scenario that you're just describing is exactly why I think this is workable.
It makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, you know, when people add metrics to a cap, they don't have to be new metrics. They can use existing metrics as a way to measure their own feature, right? Like API server request latencies or duration seconds or whatever is like a perfectly acceptable metric to measure your feature, right? Like,
wait, are you talking about production readiness right now, or?
Yeah, production readiness mandates metrics for beta features, and I'm saying
no,
that you
because
don't
you
have
said
to.
cap.
Yeah, but yeah. Production readiness is an extension in my mind of the cap.
Fair enough.
But yeah,
So
so
no, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying that like we shouldn't necessarily expect the proliferation of metrics, not necessarily. And so like people could be using stable metrics. People could be ahead of the curve. They could be using stable metrics for a beta feature, stable metrics for an alpha feature, because they're using existing metrics.
If they are existing metrics, well, I think that's perfectly fine.
For priority and fairness, would those metrics be considered like internal or debug, most of them, or are those the kind that we would actually want to make stable?
I think at the outset
both.
they should be internal, because I'm not sure how people are going to use them. I think, however, given sort of the wide scope and nature of parity and fairness, you're going to want to have some public stable metrics for gauging how your requests are getting throttled or prioritized or whatever. Like, right, like you're going to want some set of metrics for that. Like people's clusters are heavily affected by that feature.
I'm curious how this cannot be, why this wouldn't be able to be connected back to like request errors or latency.
It's going to affect latencies that will, so definitely like the duration seconds, your distributions are going to be affected by it. But how it's being affected is not really, you don't know how, right? like you just know that something is happening. I mean, like how do you tweak the settings? You have no data really.
I agree, and that is exactly why I think this is an internal metric. Yeah.
That's not internal, like
that
to what?
That the metrics would describe sort of an internal state, right? So,
No, because the difference here is internal. When we had discussed it, was more like a developer flow, like someone who's developing Kubernetes. But in this case, this feature affects end users, cluster admins, who would want
that
to
was
look
always
at
the case with internal. The internal ones are the ones that are tied to the implementation of its surrounding code.
Theoretically, we want something that's not internal here, though. Right? Like, you want to know, like, how much priority and fairness is being, like, without being tied to the implementation, like, how saturated is the pipeline? That's like, at a high level, that's what you want, that number, and you don't want that to be internal, because that's not an internal concept. It's literally the what the thing is doing and how it's affecting your cluster, and you should be able to SLO off of this, right? Because priority and fairness, when it's being exercised, slowly degrades your cluster. It prevents it from falling over, but it degrades your cluster.
Yeah, no, I think if we can put it into, you know, saturation metrics, I think that would be okay.
Yeah,
I think by what I was hoping to get at is, it seems like we're putting cluster operators in a bit of a weird position if we launch a GA feature without metrics that are stable. It almost feels like there should be some very small set of metrics that goes stable at GA, and then lots of metrics that come afterwards. And a lot of them are debug and will never go stable.
I mean, like in this case, you're going to want some set of metrics. I agree. I mean, but like people are going to be using request durations as a stable metric to know what the latencies are. But the saturation metric is like kind of a tricky one. And you're not going to know which dimensions like it makes sense to even be measuring until people start using it. It's starting to be used now, and we're realizing a lot of weird things about it. So I think it's exactly kind of why mutating metrics at that point has to be okay, right? Like,
yeah,
I
think that's fair. That this is basically we are describing the similar situation of right now. You can use the proxy metric of request duration, but we need it would be good to figure out something that is clearer about the situation, right? And so
something
it's fine
alertable.
to have that, like all the metrics that are related to a feature don't have to go through the metric stability process along with the feature, right? Like that can come afterwards. We're not mandating that it has to be in that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, like,
you can still go through metric stability after a product has
for
feature
sure.
has GA'd, right? So
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
what I'm saying. Like that's what you just described. No, like we're now we're now having more widespread adoption of this feature, and we're realizing we need better insight into it. And so we created a new alpha metric, like just an example, right? And even if we were to say the feature went GA already, we could still experiment with these metrics, and this is going to happen all the time, right? That we're going to realize there's some more aspects that we would like to understand better, and even if that's just an internal metric, right? Maybe one day we'll realize, okay, actually this is something that people want to SLO off of. Like we shouldn't. It should always be possible to go through this process afterwards. Is what I'm saying.
How many releases between beta and GA do you think?
For metric stability level or for feature or something else?
For metric stability.
It's a good question. I don't
know. That's sort of why it does seem weird to me to not require anything to be stable at GA, because then I worry a little bit about perma beta metrics.
We have static analysis, so we can basically enforce
Okay.
beta metrics being promoted after. We just have to decide the number.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I think I'm okay with that then.
Yeah.
And we are requiring a beta metric for at least a beta metric for a stable feature, right?
Yes.
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 Then that seems pretty reasonable to me.
Well, not necessarily. It can also just be comprised of completely internal metrics.
Yeah, that's fine. That completely depends on the feature. I understand that.
It does depend on the feature.
That's like that's then up to production readiness to decide, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. It's really hard to put a finger on at what point do people really use the metric, right? I want to say, in my experience, after 4 releases, people definitely start using it. But like I would say 2 releases is probably a reasonable number.
That's
But
what I was
don't know.
thinking too. 2 or
Like-
3, maybe.
Like maybe Damien has some idea about this as well. But like in the Kubernetes mixin, I want to say we start using the metrics pretty much right away. Like when there are beta features, and then people slowly start adopting this. So yeah, I think 2 releases is a reasonable number for it to promote to stable, because at this point, like the Kubernetes mixin will certainly have exercised it.
We can provide an escape hatch. We can say after 2 releases, you either have to deprecate your metric or you have to promote it. And deprecation just buys you another cycle, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can go from deprecated because you're not sure to, okay, this is the end thing that I want. But we force it. I mean, we have to force it. Otherwise, yeah, we have perma beta, which is obviously not good.
Yeah. I guess giving the escape hatch of give me 1 more release is then going to be abused to go to be perma beta.
I don't think so. I think it depends on the feature. I could see Parity and Fairness probably using it, but I see a lot of other things like scheduler stuff. Like people are pretty. Yeah, it's not super contentious. Like these are the metrics that we want for some of these features. I think some of the auth stuff. Yeah, it's like pretty simple. I think. Like you will know after 2 features, after 2 releases, like what metrics make sense.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable. Is there are there any other points that we had open?
Yeah, one more thing was we're going to be able to run static analysis against everything except the custom collectors, because those are dynamic, and there's like a set of other metrics which are dynamic, so those automatically have to be internal. So we will be able to statically analyze and generate a list of all alpha, beta, and stable metrics, but not the internal ones.
I think
internal ones we'd have to do at runtime.
Like resource metrics are going to move to the like CRI stats endpoint anyways, and then we practically have a stable list there as well. So if like that, those are the only ones where I would be worried about the collector metrics, but it seems like we already have a solution on the horizon for resource metrics. So to me, this sounds fairly reasonable, actually.
What, not having the list for internal?
Yeah, like it seems workable to start at least.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. You kind of want the list. I want to generate, like, I want to auto generate all of the metrics. I would like to do it statically, but I think you kind of have to do it at runtime because of the dynamic nature of some of the metrics.
Yeah, the problem is
sucks.
that you don't know whether that's going to be consistent or not.
You know at registration time I'm not talking about scraping the endpoint. Like we basically have a wrapper around the registry. So
Why do you know at registration time? You need to actually collect from it to.
no,
know
because
which
if
metrics.
you invoke must register, then you have access to the description of the metric, the type.
No, that is not guaranteed to be stable.
What you have to call
It
must
does not have
register
to be.
for it to even.
When you call must register, all must register verifies is that it implements the collector interface.
Right. And that there is a description, right?
Yes, but there's a collect description method. I forget. I think it's describe or something, and
Yeah.
it will return descriptions. There's no contract that it has to return the exhaustive list that it potentially knows, and there are collectors that dynamically return descriptions.
Right. Custom collectors.
Yes.
Yeah, and those we're not going to be able to do anything about. But for the set that is registered, this is basically as comprehensive as you can get.
Okay, I think I see what you mean now. You're saying you are acknowledging that this doesn't work for
Yeah.
custom collectors.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
For all the other ones, we can run describe and we can automatically collect it.
Yeah. It's going to be a superset of
Okay.
what we can get at static analysis time.
Okay. I get
But
it.
shouldn't the custom collectors like implement the interface that we have with the stability, like all the stability API and stuff for the registry at least?
I think
Because I
Rainbow
did
Mango,
one like for the aggregator, and I was implementing not the normal like registry interface, but the one you implemented in component base. So I think for this one, you can actually like get the number of
it might be possible because you're right. Rainbow Mango implemented some stuff on top of collectors, so it will work for some subset of them. Not all of them though, because you can still dynamically generate descriptions. So we can get most except the really weird ones.
I guess we could get it even for
yeah.
the ones that are implemented in Kubernetes, because we could force them to, or not. I guess we can't necessarily force them.
No, they're already existing and they're already dynamic. The work queue ones are like kind of like that.
No, they're way worse.
Yeah, well, the ones that interpolate the name.
Yes, that one. That is, I think it is a work queue one. Or
Yeah,
like
there's like a
reflector,
loop. There's like a loop or something. Yeah, it's terrible. But yeah. So those, I mean, will be perma internal. I mean, one should not do that, and we will audit them in the future and make sure that they don't happen. But they exist, and we should try to deprecate them probably.
Those particular metrics, definitely.
Yeah, we should try to deprecate them. We should try to find the set of metrics that we can't determine at registration time, and then we should try to deprecate all of them, basically.
Is this the metrics cleanup part 2? Or what did we call it back then?
No one. Well,
Overhaul?
we're gonna be able to auto-generate metrics. I mean, we're not renaming them, right? We're just getting rid of the ones that.
Okay. Well, I'm sure someone uses them, right? Whichever ones they are.
Yeah. So we might not be able to get rid of all of them.
But do they even have like stability since they are not implementing like the correct interface?
No.
Yeah, so I
they
guess
will
we
be
could
alpha.
able to. Yeah,
they would
we could be able to get
internal.
them like from the legacy registry. Maybe we can link them and see if they have or not the stability.
I think all metrics are alpha right now, but we can't parse all alpha metrics. And what we're going to do is we're going to flip that and mark all metrics internal and not parse the internal ones. But then we will selectively turn stuff into alpha because they are parsable. And then we can just
Okay.
generate our list from that.
Makes sense.
Cool. Then I guess we have an agreement on most aspects of this.
Yeah.
Well, that was productive session.
Agreed.
Cool.
Okay.
Then I guess we
Um,
can work offline on the cap.
On the proposal. Yeah,
details.
that sounds good. Is there anything else that anybody wants to discuss for the last 3 minutes? Maybe a quick one. Okay, if there's nothing, going once, going twice. All right, then everybody can have 3 minutes of their time back. Have a wonderful local time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.